I don't know why I answered that text. Come over. I found something insane. It was a Thursday night, and I'd been hoping for a quiet evening to myself. But my curiosity got the better of me. The message was from Eric, my best friend since high school and the kind of guy who couldn't resist a deal. If he wasn't dragging me into flea markets or estate sales, he was trolling Craigslist for someone's random attic junk. I pulled up to his place at 9:30. Eric's place was, let's call it eclectic. Stuffed shelves, mismatched furniture, the faint smell of incense that always lingered no matter how long you stayed. The moment I stepped inside, I could tell he was buzzing with excitement. Dude, you're not gonna believe this. He grinned wide, leading me into the living room where a small wooden box sat on the coffee table. It was old, like really old, and had strange, intricate carvings on its surface. What is it? I asked, eyeing the thing. Eric reached over and slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a board, about the size of a placemat, with the alphabet, numbers, and yes, no, and goodbye etched onto its surface. A small, heart-shaped piece of wood with a clear lens sat beside it. No way, I muttered. You bought a Ouija board? Didn't just buy it, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I found it, at that estate sale on Greenway. That got my attention. Everyone in town knew about the Greenway house, a dilapidated Victorian that had sat empty for decades. It had been the source of endless local legends, all involving missing people, bizarre sightings, or mysterious noises. Wait, someone let you in there? Didn't exactly ask, he said sheepishly. I was already uneasy, but Eric wasn't the type to let a little creep factor stop him. He pushed the board toward me. Come on, he said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Let's try it. Are you serious? I asked, eyeing the board like it might bite me. Eric rolled his eyes. It's just a board, man. What? You scared? I'm not scared, I said quickly, though I was definitely starting to feel uneasy. I just don't mess with that kind of stuff. Eric grinned, sensing my hesitation. It's all fake, you know? Nothing's going to happen. But what if it does? Don't you want to know? I sighed, already regretting every decision that led me to his living room that night. Fine, but if anything weird happens, I'm leaving. Eric clapped his hands like a kid on Christmas morning and grabbed the planchette, the heart-shaped piece with the lens. He set it in the middle of the board and dimmed the lights. Atmosphere, he said, winking. I sat down across from him, and we each placed 2 fingers lightly on the planchette. The wood felt cold under my fingertips, colder than it should have been for how warm the room was. All right, Eric began, his voice dropping into a dramatic tone. Is there anyone here with us? We waited. Nothing happened. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of Eric's fridge in the kitchen. I glanced at him, ready to call the whole thing off, when the planchette jerked ever so slightly to the left. Was that you? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. No, Eric said quickly. His face had lost some of its bravado. We stared at each other, then back at the board. The planchette moved again, sliding smoothly toward the word yes. My stomach dropped. Okay, funny. You're pushing it. I swear I'm not, Eric whispered, his eyes wide. Who are you? He asked the board, his voice now trembling slightly. The planchette began to move again, this time faster. My fingers were barely touching it, but I felt its pull like an invisible force was guiding it. It stopped on a letter, M. Then another, then an R. M-A-R? Eric read aloud, his voice faltering. The planchette kept moving, spelling out the rest of the name. Mary. The room felt different now, heavier somehow. My skin prickled with goosebumps, and the air seemed colder. Mary, are you here with us? Eric asked. The planchette slid to yes. I pulled my fingers off immediately. Okay, we're done. Eric grabbed my wrist. No, wait. Let's just see what she wants. Eric, this isn't funny anymore. But he ignored me. Mary, how did you die? The planchette didn't move at first. Then it started sliding faster this time. It spelled out a single word, B-A-R-N. The barn. Eric said, his voice almost a whisper. As soon as he said it, the lights in the room flickered. A loud thud echoed from somewhere upstairs. What the hell was that? I whispered, my heart pounding. Eric stood up, suddenly looking pale. I don't know. We both froze as the sound of footsteps creaked across the ceiling. Eric, I'm not kidding, I said, backing away from the board. This is messed up. Put it back in the box. But Eric didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the Ouija board. The planchette was still moving, and neither of us was touching it. We both stared as the planchette glided across the board, seemingly of its own accord. It moved with purpose, deliberate and unnerving. Eric, I hissed, turn on the lights. But Eric just stood there, rooted to the spot, his eyes glued to the planchette. It spelled out another word, slow and deliberate, HELP. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The footsteps upstairs had stopped, but the silence was somehow worse. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Help with what? Eric asked, his voice barely audible. The planchette slid again, faster this time. BURN. I swallowed hard. Burn? What the hell does that mean? Eric looked at me, his face pale. Maybe she's talking about the barn? The one she mentioned before. Eric, we don't even know if this is real, I snapped. And even if it is, we are not doing this. Pack it up. Now. But Eric wasn't listening. Mary, what do you mean by burn? Is someone in danger? The planchette moved to yes. And then, as if on cue, we heard it. A low, guttural sound that I can only describe as breathing. It came from upstairs, slow and raspy, like someone or something was standing just above us. I grabbed Eric's arm. We're leaving, right now. Eric hesitated, his gaze flicking between me and the board. What if she needs our help? What if we're the only ones who can? The breathing turned into a loud bang, like someone slamming their fist against the ceiling. We both jumped, and I swear I felt the floor vibrate under my feet. Eric, I'm serious. Let's go. He finally snapped out of it, slamming the box shut and grabbing the board. Fine. Let's go. We rushed out of the house, not bothering to lock the door behind us. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face, but it didn't make me feel any safer. As we reached my car, Eric paused, clutching the box tightly. We can't just leave it here. What do you mean? This thing, it's not safe. What if someone else finds it? Good, I said, yanking open the car door. Let someone else deal with it. Eric shook his head. No, we need to destroy it. Destroy it how? It's a piece of wood. Before I could stop him, Eric tossed the box into the back seat of my car and climbed in. We'll figure it out. Just drive. As we sped down the road, neither of us spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. But then, about 10 minutes into the drive, Eric broke the silence. Do you smell that? I sniffed the air and froze. Smoke, faint but unmistakable. Is that coming from the vents? I asked, my voice tight. Eric shook his head, his eyes wide with panic. No, it's coming from the back. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. The box. It was glowing, faint orange light seeping through the cracks. Pull over, Eric yelled. I swerved onto the shoulder, and we both jumped out of the car. Eric flung open the back door and grabbed the box, tossing it onto the pavement. The second it hit the ground, the light inside flared up. Flames licked through the edges of the lid, and the wood began to blacken and crack. We backed away, watching in stunned silence as the box burned, completely on its own. What the hell is happening? I whispered. Eric didn't answer. He just stared as the flames consumed the box, the carvings on its surface glowing red-hot before turning to ash. When it was finally over, all that was left was a pile of charred wood and the faint scent of smoke. Eric looked at me, his face pale and drawn. Do you think it's so gone? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. But as we stood there in the dark, the night eerily quiet, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we'd unleashed wasn't done with us yet. We stood on the side of the road, staring at the smoldering pile of ash that had once been the box. The night felt unnaturally quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. "Let's just go," I finally said, my voice shaky. "Whatever that thing was, it's gone now." Eric nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Yeah, you're right." We got back into the car and drove in silence, both of us too rattled to speak. But as the familiar streets of Eric's neighborhood came into view, I started to feel a little relief. Maybe we'd gotten lucky. Maybe we'd actually stopped whatever that thing was. Eric leaned back in his seat, exhaling deeply. "Man, I need a drink." I forced a weak laugh. "You and me both." I pulled into his driveway and killed the engine. "All right, man. Get some sleep. The words died in my throat. Eric's front door was open. Not just unlocked, wide open, the kind of open that screams someone's inside. Eric noticed it at the same time I did. "I locked that," he said, his voice trembling. "I swear I locked it." "Maybe you forgot," I said, though I didn't believe it. Eric shook his head, already climbing out of the car. "No, I'm sure Eric, wait." I called after him, but he was already halfway to the door. I scrambled out and followed, my heart hammering in my chest. The house was dark, every light off except for the faint glow of the kitchen window. Eric stepped inside, and I hesitated on the threshold. "Eric, don't," but he ignored me, disappearing into the house. I stood there for a moment, debating whether to follow him or just leave. The smart part of me was screaming to run, but I couldn't just leave him. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, thick with the same smoky scent we'd smelled in the car. The faint glow from the kitchen was brighter now, flickering slightly, like the flame of a candle. "Eric," I whispered, my voice barely audible. No answer. I crept toward the kitchen, every step feeling like it took a year. As I rounded the corner, I saw Eric standing in front of the sink, his back to me. "Eric," I said again, louder this time. He didn't move. The glow was coming from something on the counter. A single piece of wood, charred and blackened, but still burning faintly around the edges. The planchette. I felt my knees go weak. How is that possible? Eric turned to me slowly, and when I saw his face, my blood turned to ice. His eyes weren't his anymore. They were pitch black, the whites completely gone, and his expression was blank, almost serene. "You shouldn't have burned it," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Eric, what the hell?" Before I could finish, the planchette on the counter moved on its own, scraping across the surface with a horrible screeching sound. Stopped abruptly, pointing directly at me. Eric smiled. It wasn't his smile. It was something else entirely, cold and cruel, a predator playing with its prey. "You invited her," he said, taking a slow step toward me. "She's not leaving now." I backed away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. "Eric, this isn't funny. Stop messing around." But he didn't stop. He kept coming, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet being yanked on invisible strings. I stumbled back into the hallway, grabbing for the nearest thing I could use as a weapon. My hand landed on a lamp, and I ripped it from the wall, holding it out in front of me like a shield. "Stay back," I shouted. Eric, or whatever was controlling him, stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then he tilted his head, his grin widening. "She likes you, you know? You're the one she really wants." The lamp slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor. Behind him, the shadows on the wall started to move. They twisted and stretched, forming a shape that was vaguely human but wrong, too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent in ways they shouldn't. It leaned forward, its face, or what passed for a face, emerging from the darkness. A woman's face. "Run," she whispered, her voice echoing in my head. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, slamming the door shut and locking it. I looked back at the house, half expecting to see Eric, or that thing, coming after me. But the door was shut now, the house dark and silent. I sat there for what felt like hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Finally, I started the car and drove away. I haven't seen Eric since that night. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I swear I can hear her, whispering my name. And I know she's still out there. Weeks have passed since that night, but it hasn't let me go. Not completely. I've moved, changed my number, deleted all my social media. I even quit my job and started fresh in a new city where no one knows me. It doesn't help. The first time I heard her whisper my name, I thought I was losing my mind. It was late at night, and I was lying in bed, desperately trying to convince myself that everything that happened at Eric's house was just some kind of freak hallucination. Ryan? It was faint, like a breath against my ear. I bolted upright, my heart racing. The room was empty. Just your imagination? I muttered, wiping the sweat from my face. You're stressed. That's all. But it wasn't. The next day, I saw it, something impossible. I was walking to my car after picking up groceries when I passed a shop window. The reflection was clear, almost too clear, and there was someone behind me. A woman. She was just standing there, watching me. Her face was pale, and her eyes, God, her eyes were empty, just black pits. I spun around, clutching my keys like a weapon. But the sidewalk was empty. I stopped going out after that. I thought maybe if I ignored it, if I just kept my head down and refused to acknowledge her, she'd leave me alone. But she didn't. She got bolder. One night, I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was faint at first, just a soft, rhythmic scrape that I couldn't place. Then it got louder, more frantic, like nails on a chalkboard. It was coming from inside the closet. I stared at the door, paralyzed. The scratching stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, slowly, the door creaked open. No one was there. I didn't sleep that night. I started to feel her more than see her after that. The temperature in a room would drop suddenly. Shadows would stretch unnaturally long. And always, I'd hear her voice. Soft, insistent, and impossible to ignore. Ryan, let me in. I tried everything. Burning sage, sprinkling salt, even reaching out to a local pastor for help. He listened to my story with a mixture of disbelief and pity, but when he came to bless the house, he stopped short the moment he stepped inside. I can't, he said, backing away. What do you mean you can't? I demanded, desperate. He just shook his head, his face pale. Whatever's here, it doesn't want me here, and I'm not strong enough to face it. He left without another word, and I was alone again. The worst part came 2 nights ago. I woke up to the sound of humming, a soft, eerie tune that made my skin crawl. I sat up, and there she was, standing at the foot of my bed. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and her dark, empty eyes bore into mine. She smiled, a slow, awful smile that stretched too wide for her face. Ryan, she whispered, her voice echoing in the small room. You shouldn't have burned it. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. She moved closer, her body jerking in unnatural, stilted movements, like a broken marionette. I pressed myself against the headboard, trembling. You invited me, she said, her face now inches from mine. Her breath was cold, and it smelled like ash. What do you want? I managed to choke out. Her smile faded, and her expression turned blank, almost sad. Help me. I blinked, confused. What? She tilted her head the other way, studying me. You can't stop it now. None of you can. What does that mean? I demanded, but she was already gone. Just like that. The room was empty, as if she'd never been there. I haven't slept since then. I don't think I ever will again. I don't know what she meant, but I can feel it. This isn't over. Not for me. Not for Eric. Not for anyone who's touched that board. And the worst part? The box is back. It's sitting on my kitchen table right now, perfectly intact, with no sign of the fire that destroyed it. The carvings on its surface are darker this time, the intricate lines twisting into shapes I can't even describe. The planchette is resting on top of it. And I swear, as I sit here, writing this, I can hear it. Scratching. Waiting. I haven't touched the box. Not yet. I've tried everything. Ignoring it, praying over it, even trying to leave my apartment altogether. But every time I step out the door, something stops me. The air grows heavy, the shadows in the hallway stretch toward me, and I hear her voice. Don't run, Ryan. You can't escape. I've tried to call people, old friends, family, anyone. But my phone doesn't work. The screen flickers with static, and sometimes, just before the line cuts off, I hear her humming that awful tune. And then last night, I swear to God, I heard Eric. I was sitting in the dark, staring at the box, trying to convince myself that this was all in my head. Then I heard it. Ryan, it's me. Open the door. My heart stopped. It was Eric's voice, clear as day, coming from the other side of my apartment door. I froze, unsure of what to do. He'd disappeared weeks ago, vanished without a trace. No calls, no messages, no sign of him anywhere. Ryan, come on, man, the voice said again. It's me. I need your help. I stood, trembling, and slowly made my way to the door. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to turn around and lock myself in my room. But I didn't listen. Eric, I whispered. Yeah, man, open up. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip it. As I turned it, I heard something, just the faintest sound, like a low growl. Eric, I asked again, my voice barely audible. The growl grew louder, deeper, until it wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling, a vibration in the air that made my chest tighten. Let me in, Ryan, the voice said again, but it didn't sound like Eric anymore. It was deeper, colder, and filled with something that made my stomach twist in fear. I yanked my hand away from the knob and stumbled back. Ryan, the voice whispered, low and guttural now. You can't hide forever. The growling stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I backed away from the door, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and tripped over something behind me. The box. It was on the floor now, even though I was sure I'd left it on the table. The planchette was sitting on the board, pointed at the word yes. I stared at it, my skin crawling, and then slowly the planchette began to move. No, I whispered, shaking my head. It moved again, spelling out a single word, OPN. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. I just sat there watching the box, waiting for whatever was coming next. And then, as the first light of dawn filtered through my window, I heard it again. The scratching. This time it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the drywall, my pulse pounding in my ears. The sound was faint but unmistakable, like nails dragging across the other side of the surface. Ryan. Her voice was inside the wall now, soft and insidious, like it was wrapping itself around me. Let me in. I staggered back, clutching my head. No, leave me alone. The room grew cold, so cold that I could see my breath in the air. And then suddenly the scratching stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just an unbearable silence. And then the drywall cracked. A thin line snaked its way across the surface, spreading like veins. Pieces of plaster began to crumble, and something dark and oily seeped through the cracks. Let me in, Ryan, her voice whispered again, louder this time. I ran. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my car keys and bolted out the door, leaving the box, the cracks, everything behind. I drove for hours, not caring where I was going, as long as it was away. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. And when I finally stopped, miles from home, and checked my rearview mirror, she was sitting in the back seat. Couldn't breathe. She was there, sitting perfectly still in the back seat, her head tilted at that awful, unnatural angle. Her empty black eyes bore into mine through the rearview mirror. Keep driving, Ryan, she whispered, her voice soft but filled with command. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't grip the steering wheel. But I obeyed. I drove, down an empty road I didn't recognize, through a landscape that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. Where are we going? I whispered, my voice barely audible. She didn't answer. She just smiled, slow, wide, and inhuman. The air in the car grew colder with every mile, the windows frosting over even though it wasn't winter. My breath fogged up the glass, and the faint smell of burning would fill the car. And then she spoke. "You shouldn't have burned it." I swallowed hard, gripping the wheel tighter. "What do you want from me?" She leaned forward, her movements jerky, like a marionette on tangled strings. "I don't want anything," she said, her smile fading into something colder, more sinister. "But they do." "They?" I echoed, dread curling in my stomach. She didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head toward the road ahead. "Stop here." I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but shadows and silence. "Get out," she said, her voice a whisper that echoed in my mind. I hesitated, my fingers gripping the door handle. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to drive away and never look back. But when I looked in the mirror again, she was gone. The back seat was empty. My heart pounded as I turned to look over my shoulder, but there was no one there. Just an empty seat and the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. And then I saw it. The box. It was sitting in the middle of the road, perfectly intact, the carvings on its surface glowing faintly in the dark. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This isn't real. This can't be real." But it was. The box began to vibrate, a low, ominous hum filling the air. The planchette slid across the board, moving faster and faster until it came to a stop on a single word. "YOU." I staggered back, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. And then, from the darkness beyond the road, I saw them. Shapes, dozens of them, maybe more, emerging from the shadows. Twisted figures with elongated limbs, faces that seemed to shift and blur, eyes that burned like embers. They surrounded the car, their movements slow and deliberate, like predators circling their prey. And at the center of them all, she stood. Mary. Her pale face was illuminated by the faint glow of the box, her black eyes fixed on me. "You opened the door," she said, her voice echoing in the cold, still air. "And now it's your turn." "My turn for what?" I shouted, my voice breaking. She smiled that awful, too wide smile. "To play." The figures closed in, their twisted forms pressing against the windows, their faces staring at me with a terrible, unblinking hunger. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing I saw was Mary's hand reaching for the car door, her fingers impossibly long, her nails scraping against the glass. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my apartment. The box was on the table, the planchette resting perfectly in the center. I don't know how I got here. I don't know if I even left. But the shadows in the corners of the room are deeper now. The air is colder, and the box is open. I can hear the scratching again. And this time, I know, it's not just her. They're all waiting. If you find this, don't open it. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. But if you hear her voice, it's already too late. Good luck.